Hello, everyone. Welcome to Threads 2023, our third annual conference. And today we have with us Janell Rempell. And I'd like to welcome you, Janell. And what brings you here today? Why did you accept our invitation?
Thank you, Anita. So at the opening of Threads 2022, last year's conference, the conference was described as not a gathering of expert advice on how to solve problems. Instead, it requires listening and intentional engagement, weaving, and seeing and paying attention to how each thread might be woven into each other and even into our own story. So I was invited to speak at Threads this year because I did engage intentionally at Threads 2022. I engaged intentionally and in many instances in the only way I could in this virtual conference format through the chat function of the sessions I attended.
Yes,
So
you did.
I want to invite this year's conference audience to do the same. Ask questions, offer reflections, and wonder aloud about how to apply what they're learning in their own life and communities, in the communities that extend beyond this one here. So in these brief moments with you, I'm going to try to draw together a number of threads from my own story, as well as pay respect to my first experiences of Threads and to the varied array of conversations that it so expertly and expressively curated into a vision and a model of what diverse community can be when it gathers to listen and engage intentionally, respectfully, and in celebration of the many rich gifts we have to share with each other and with our shared and so very challenged world. So I hope you, the audience, will both listen and intentionally engage and find some value in this, my humble gift back to this community.
Very well said, Janell. A lovely entrance to the talk. And I guess I'm curious, when you mentioned you were in, following Threads now on several of our platforms. In our last Threads, for example, is there any particular talk or session that you could say especially resonated with you, and why?
Yeah, so right from the first moments of Threads 2022, I was struck by the poetry, literally spoken word poets and emotions being evoked. And as the conference continued, the repeated interweaving of artistic and intellectual ways of being and exploring and relating were a really thrilling experience for me. My strong response to this was shaped by my own particular combination of intellectual and artistic and emotional characteristics, as well as this long-time struggle I've had with the way that so much of the world is divided into these oppositional binaries, right? Thinking or feeling, professional or personal, male, female, good or bad, etc. So I see so many realities that do not fit comfortably into one side or the other of many of these contrasted categories. And that has often made for uncomfortable experiences for me and many others in both personal and professional life. And so the integrative and multidisciplinary approach taken by the Threads conference was a revelation and a relief to me. And the more I listened, the more I opened up to engage with what I was hearing and seeing. Hence my copious responses in the chat threads of the sessions I attended.
Yes, and your chats were very informative and very, very much appreciated, Janell. So you've mentioned that there's a lot of learning from Threads. So I'm just wondering, what does learning in everyday life mean for you, or how might we perceive learning in your view?
Yeah, well, I believe there's truly a wealth of learning to be gained from Threads. And this conference draws on such a rich and diverse array of perspectives and experiences, and then uses really varied modes of expression to share these with an equally diverse audience. And all these sessions and more are captured and available for convenient viewing in the Threads library. So that's also wonderful. Threads conference sessions are experiential and multisensory. They're evocative and emotional, and the best ways of learning, of knowledge sharing, incorporate these aspects, in my opinion. And here's why I say this. Learning to me is, on one level, a taking in of new information, right? At least at first. In terms of this year's conference theme of perception, it could be described as a growth in perception. But I think that it can be, and often needs to be, much more than that. So the best learning, I think, is not just acquiring bits of information, but being transformed by them. Thank you. Sorry, this is my
Yeah,
cat
the
interrupting.
cat has ideas. The cat clearly
He
has ideas
does.
about
He
perception as
has
well.
very astute perceptions that he wants to share with the world. Yes. So I think that the best learning is not just acquiring these bits of information, gathering them, but being transformed by them, or by the sums of the parts, maybe. Although, of course, learning and transformation isn't always like a mathematical equation. But learning often entails instead a shift in perception, in awareness, and in experience that shifts and changes us, our thinking, but also our actions, our practices, how we live and move through the world after our encounter with the new information. And sometimes these changes are small and subtle, and sometimes they're huge and irrevocable. They can feel seismic, like just shifting the ground on which our lives, our senses of ourselves and the world that we live in are built. So learning is an incredibly powerful thing, and it can be exciting and enlivening. It can also be stressful or even scary, and it can seem dangerous or be perceived to be dangerous, especially when it may lead people to change in ways that they or others don't want. So we often hear people say like knowledge is power, and we know that those who want to hold power often try to contain and control knowledge as well through controlling our ways of learning, most obviously like our education systems, but also all forms of media and even our family and social structures, right? If you think about the most, like the earliest and probably most profoundly ingrained things that you've learned in your life, where did you learn them? Right? For most of us, it's in our families. It's in those relationships that are the closest to us. And which learnings and experiences most influence how you move through your life now? Aren't they the ones that you felt the most? The ones that that touched deeply into your core needs and values, that spoke most resonantly to that which you hold most dear and by which you define yourself. So how and where we learn matters greatly and informs what we learn and also then what we do with what we learn. And I think that Threads is an excellent ground for this to happen also.
Well, thank you. That is, yeah, knowledge is power. And, we all have this power to improve our knowledge. And especially, I think that might come from different experiences. So, if I had to ask, I think you have some very interesting experiences in your own life, and your circumstances, I think perhaps with another country. I think you were raised in the Philippines. Could you tell us a little more about that, please?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I said, Threads 2022 really reframed my perception of what a conference could be. And I'm going to sort of start back there and then I'll get to, my background as well.
Okay.
So, the way that this conference drew individuals and communities into interwoven conversations, much like we're having now, and considerations of diverse and common experiences, ideas, reflections, hopes, fears. Also, the insertion and influence of the arts to express big ideas and elicit strong emotions, to share stories of complex realities, both shared and unfamiliar,
Mhm.
to build bridges between your experiences or another person's experiences and my own, between there and here, then and now, and today and someday in the future. And underlying all of that, the premise that there's value in each one's story, that each experience, each expression has value, and even that there's more value in the ways that each of these can intertwine with each other. So Threads 2022 was really remarkable to me, and I've spoken about it many times over the year since I attended, in all sorts of different contexts. The only other conference that I've enjoyed as much as Threads was the 2006 conference of the Canadian Association of Sociocultural Anthropology, which took
Oh,
place in
wow.
Montreal, and I attended as a nearly at the end of my undergrad student in sociocultural anthropology, and that subject resonated for me largely because of experiences that I had in my childhood. So, as you referred to, Anita, my parents spent 5 years working in the Philippines when I was a kid, and against all the odds, certain events, information, and perceptions aligned so that my father felt moved to take this little young family to, halfway around the world. And
That's
that
wonderful.
choice, yeah, it's incredible when I think back on it. But that choice and action changed my life in ways I can't possibly quantify, but I can still feel in my life to this day. Of course, those years I was about age 5 to age 11, those are really formative years in any
They are.
kid's life. And so the experience of living in another place and being immersed in another culture at that young age have really shaped who I am in a lot of ways. And they're not always obvious to everyone or even sometimes to myself, but they're nonetheless real and significant, nearly 4 decades later. That it's only in the last couple of years that I've sort of started to have this inkling that maybe those early years in another country sort of made me like a different type of Canadian in a sense. No doubt they shifted and changed how I perceive the world around me, and really shifted the centricity of to that point in my life, predominantly white, settler descended, living in a small town, limited life experience, and even that of my family, my parents, broadened all of our understandings that there are so many ways to live in this world, and each of those makes sense in its own context. And so I think now, maybe there isn't just one Canadian culture anyway, especially since most of the people who live in this country today came from somewhere else to begin with. All but Indigenous people in Canada are in truth immigrants and refugees from elsewhere. And even I recently read in an Indigenous creation or origin story that it tells of the first human arriving on this water-covered continent from the sky. So even in that case, they came from somewhere else. So maybe this is what we all share in common, right? To be Canadian or to live on this land means to come from somewhere else and to share a blend of cultures and qualities from various home places all over the world and maybe even beyond. So in my view, this is also what the Threads conference does, and herein lies its strength. But there's another key element, almost like a fly in the ointment, if you will, to Threads, but also to perception, if it's to be to our benefit, and that's understanding or even wisdom. So this is what can make perception tricky, in my view. If I perceive a situation or a communication in a way other than it's meant, if I misunderstand or misperceive it, well, I think we've all experienced this and know how uncomfortable and even disastrous this can be. Yeah. So there's a transmission and a translation challenge too, especially when we're talking about people perceiving other people. So we only ever see from our own perception or perspective. And yet there are so many ways to see things and to understand what we're seeing, and so many potential ways to respond, to act in response. And I think this is where a lot of us are stuck right now. The options are overwhelming and we have decision fatigue. And old ways, right? We've heard this term. Old ways of thinking and doing don't fit the complex realities we find ourselves in and don't provide effective solutions to the complex challenges we face. So what do we do? I'm just suggesting that maybe all these crises are our greatest opportunities to learn and to transform ourselves and also the shared world that we are in for the better. So coincidentally, around the same time I attended Threads 2022, I also signed up for a year-long online collaborative learning adventure called Reweaving the World. And this grew from the work of two of my favorite teachers, the dynamic duo of Kathleen or Katie and Gay Hendricks, and the Big Leap community of practice and play that continues to expand around them in their work. So the term Big Leap comes from the title of Gay's more recent books, but the Hendricks' work spans decades and has interwoven, influenced, and cross-pollinated with many other experts across many fields. Their work seeks to melt the fear responses that we humans are so used to and in some ways even wired for neurologically and biologically speaking. And to do this, they use playful wonder and genuine appreciation to find more fruitful and fun ways into more embodied, creative, collaborative, and conscious living and loving. It's really great stuff. I've been watching them for years now, at a bit of a distance, but yeah, I have a lot of good things from that work. So the goal of the Reweaving the World class in particular was to ask the question, how might we reweave the world, our actions and interactions into a better social fabric as we come out of the global pandemic? This widespread experience that has challenged so many of us so much and has really revealed so many of the ways that our old normal was not serving or supporting many of us very well. And instead of going back to that normal, can we co-create something better, something stronger and kinder and more nourishing to all of us? So the questions raised in the Reweaving the World group remain, and they remain compelling to me. And I think their answers are important for all of us to intentionally engage with at this time. Now, speaking of time, Though you are listening to my words in late January 2023, which is winter in Canada and coincidentally also the time of my 46th birthday, I am
Oh, happy
gathering these thoughts.
birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
In
Thank
the
you.
for the future. Yeah.
Right. Yes. We're time traveling here, Anita. It's very
Yeah.
exciting. So I'm gathering these thoughts in the middle of the Canadian summer of 2022. So a little bit of back and forth. At the time I'm gathering these thoughts, gardens are growing, various insects are buzzing about, they're busy about things we don't normally even think about, unless they should happen to get in our way, becoming inconvenient or annoying, interrupting our comfort, or in some extreme cases, threatening our safety. Unfortunately, we humans often seem to think about or not think about other elements and iterations of life in this way, unless it serves me and my comforts, my goals. It's just a nuisance and can and probably should just be done away with. So unfortunately, we often treat each other, especially when we see each other as others, with this same attitude. And in my humble opinion, many, if not all, of the world's ills follow from this limited way of perceiving and understanding. So what if we listen to each other as Threads challenges us to, with intentional engagement? What if we tried to see things from each other's perspectives, to understand and appreciate what things mean to each other and why? And what if we treated each other well, even if we couldn't understand each other fully? Because can we ever really? So I don't have enough clarity of perception to understand, let alone to answer all the questions that we face in our world today, or even just here at this conference. But I hope that everyone will take the threads of the inquiries and interactions that they have and that they engage with at this conference and use them to weave us all a better world. And if anyone needs some inspiration, I want to leave everyone with this. So
Please do.
again, at the time that I gathered these thoughts to share with you today, I had just begun reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Many of you will know
Lovely
this.
book.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, the subtitle is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. So in her book, Kimmerer relates a dream she had of an Andean market she visited in real life and in her dream. And in the dream market, none of the vendors would allow her to pay for the fruits and vegetables she was obtaining from each stall. And she writes, I looked in my basket. It was still half empty, but it felt full. I had everything I needed. It's funny. Had all the things in the market merely been a very low price, I probably would have scooped up as much as I could. But when everything became a gift, I felt self-restraint. I didn't want to take too much. And I began thinking of what small presents I might bring to the vendors tomorrow. Kimmerer says the dream faded, of course, but the feelings remain. I've thought of it often and recognize now that I was witness there to the conversion of a market economy to a gift economy, from private goods to commonwealth. And in that transformation, the relationships became as nourishing as the food I was getting. Across the market stalls and blankets, warmth and compassion were changing hands. There was a shared celebration of abundance for all we'd been given. And since every market basket contained a meal, there was justice. So why did I choose to share this passage? I wanted to leave you with these wise words to carry with you for your consideration and perhaps application through intentional engagement with each other and with any others you encounter as you go forward from this time and place into those ahead of us. Kimmerer speaks of economies, and many of us came to this country for economic reasons, or our ancestors did. And I think that we have to look at our economic realities and shift them so that they do a better job of sustaining all of us and the world that we live in, and so that those who come after us will have a world to sustain them too. And this passage also speaks of the importance of relationships, feelings, and compassion. And I hear these themes echoed over and over in wisdom teachings from all times and places, and also in the sessions I heard at Threads 2022. And lastly, in my perception, Kimmerer's words describe what is also true of Threads. In my experience, this conference is also a shared celebration of abundance. And so I just pray in my way that we may carry home the gifts we have gathered here and continue to share the wealth. May the knowledge we have shared here continue to form our perceptions so we are able to understand each other better and treat each other well, whether we understand each other fully or not. And may this more generous way of being truly transform us and our world, and that we all be better for it. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's wonderful, Janelle, and you're just full of abundance of global care, and
Mm.
the ideas that you've been able to bring out and what you've talked about gives us a sense that that time in the Philippines, and also just the way you are, the way you've become, the way you've allowed yourself to evolve, um, allows for this global care, which is really, really important right now.
Mhm.
So it's not just about us and our little bubble and our little nation, it's about the entire world, and having a world where everyone in the future will also flourish. And
Yeah.
so the gift economy, and the economy definitely needs revision.
Mhm.
So lovely to speak with you, and lovely to hear your ideas. And we look forward to more comments in 2023
No
threads. So
doubt.
thank you again, and a pleasure speaking with you today.
You too, Anita. Thanks so much.
Take care.